There have been over 60 million abortions committed in the United States. All those precious lives lost in the United States since Roe essentially threw out every state law on abortion. And a restoration of the law in that regard is going to save millions of lives, countless millions of lives. And it's a great day. I'm assuming it's going to happen. It will be a great day for our community and our nation and the world. All those lives will be saved as a result of Roe being overturned. We had one of the worst attacks on the Supreme Court in history, which was the leaking of a confidential document. It's the first opinion the court issued internally, the majority draft opinion on the Roe case. There's a case before the Supreme Court in which the court is considering whether to uphold Roe versus Wade and the various opinions issued since then that essentially guarantee the right to an abortion for most women throughout all 9 months of pregnancy. From the moment of conception, when biological life begins, through the moment of birth. And that's the law of the land under Roe and its progeny. And the Supreme Court evidently is willing to overturn it because the reporting out of Politico, as a result of the leak of this draft opinion, is that this draft opinion has a majority. It's written by Justice Alito, and it obviously hasn't been finalized, and I suspect it probably will be largely like the final decision. But this obviously was designed, this leak, to put pressure on the court to protect the right of abortion. And in doing so, they've created a situation in which justices' lives and the lives of their family and other court personnel have been put at risk. You have demonstrations by the left who specializes in using violence and the threat of violence and intimidation to get their way politically. And you have these demonstrations outside the homes of justices. Imagine if you had demonstrators outside your home. You'd be in fear for your life, wouldn't you? How could you be secure in your home when you have people yelling the most vile things about you and your family outside your home? And the Biden administration has yet to denounce these demonstrations. In fact, when you look at the statements out of the Biden White House, they say that people demonstrate all sorts of places. They should follow the law, but the implication was they have a right to be outside a justice's home, contrary to federal law. And by now, I'm sure you've probably seen it quoted 6 ways to Sunday that prohibit any attempt to, through protest or pickets, to influence a judicial proceeding or influence a judge by picketing or demonstrating outside either actually a courthouse or a residence of a judge. And it's a federal crime. And of course, the Biden administration has done zilch to enforce that law. Zilch. And, I am concerned about members of the court. Now, who do I think leaked this? I think a liberal did. I don't know if it was a member or not. But either way, I am concerned about all the officials, all of the jurists, all the justices on the Supreme Court and their families, because who knows? You got 5 justices, Alito and Justice Thomas and Justice Gorsuch and Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Barrett, who evidently support putting back to the states the right to try to protect unborn human beings from being killed by abortion. And if any of those justices are no longer justices, I don't even want to say the word, the decision could be changed. So by doing this, you're inviting the worst possible violence to be directed at the court. The worst possible violence. And I know Chief Justice, I'm sure all the justices, at least the one, assuming none of them are involved, are all probably upset by this leak. Because typically these things are kept private, and it's not typically, they're always kept private. Sometimes rumors of decisions and the way things are going on the court get leaked out, And but that's a far cry from an actual draft decision being leaked out by someone who violated the rules and arguably violated law in several ways. Now, what should be done about this leak? I think there should be a full-blown investigation. They should hire a special prosecutor, not rely. The Chief Justice appointed the Marshal of the Court, who is essentially the mayor of the Supreme Court. She runs the police and essentially the operations and administrative functions of the court, make sure everyone gets paid. They should bring in someone who's expert in doing criminal investigations, because this was a crime. This was an obstruction of the court. This was a contempt of the court. And I know the lower courts, and I can't imagine a Supreme Court doesn't have the inherent authority lower courts have to protect itself in terms of contempt proceedings when this type of misconduct happens. Violating the confidences of the justices who are trying to reach a decision in the way they ordinarily do, without political pressure. So this is a very dangerous time for our republic again, because the left once again is targeting the Supreme Court with intimidation and the air of violence. And of course, Chuck Schumer endorsed this. He says it's the American way for people to be protesting in violation of federal law outside the homes of justices. Of course, Schumer 2 years ago threatened directly, I think it was Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, on another abortion case. He said, you won't know what hit you. I mean, how is that not a threat? So you've got these politicians who think it's okay to threaten quite explicitly, incite. There's that word. Remember that word? That we're never allowed to incite. They impeached Trump for nothing, but they said they impeached him for incitement because we know he didn't incite anything. Here you got literally people endorsing illegal behavior. From the Biden White House suggesting they're not doing anything wrong, to the majority leader of the United States Senate, the most powerful man in the Senate, one might argue. These are terrible times. And the only reason I'm not yelling in outrage is because I wasn't here last week. So time has passed, so I'm not as angry as I would have been on the day it happened. But it is a terrible time for our country. And I tell you, the Supreme Court was blown up by this leak. And the damage to me is to me, I don't understand if it can, I don't know if it can be repaired or not. I don't know what the extent will be. We'll still figure that out. But as one of my colleagues mentioned to me, she says, think of all the other courts. If they have opinions or decisions to make that are of significant public controversy, can they trust their colleagues or clerks or other court personnel not to leak material out? Even if you're a lone district court judge, and I'm just talking about the federal system, it applies to the state systems as well. Maybe your clerk gives you a draft opinion and you say, well, that's garbage, I'm not doing that, and then the clerk leaks it. Blows up the whole system of our judiciary. And I'm not someone who believes the judiciary is the end-all and be-all of our Constitution. I mean, some of these judicial supremacists think the most important branch of government is the judiciary as opposed to being one of three, right? But the Supreme Court needs to be able to operate and consider their decisions they're making, because the decisions are, they're made in an atmosphere that's not perfect as it is. But when you have people protesting outside someone's home, it's necessarily intimidating, necessarily, there's, as I said, this air of violence, and I think justices' lives are on the line. So if I were the court, I'd release this decision immediately. I mean, and I encourage you, by the way, it's out there, so I encourage you to read it. I mean, the good news is that it looks like the, and I'm assuming this decision will hold up, the rule of law is going to prevail in this abortion craziness. And the precious lives of unborn human beings will once again be able to be protected under law by the states. Now, Judicial Watch had filed an amicus brief with the court asking it to overturn Roe. This is something the states need to be able to regulate. And whether it goes beyond that, whether the federal government needs to intervene to protect lives generally, the lives of unborn human beings generally, I guess that's going to be debate for a future day. But I encourage you to read this decision, because I've been, one of the reasons I'm in politics or in public policy is because of abortion. Because if you want to talk about a collapse of the rule of law, where you have an entire class of human beings who are kept outside the protections of the law that protect your lives and my life. But if you're of a certain age and you're in the womb of your mother, your life isn't protected at all under the Roe laws. And that's going to be changed. There have been over 60 million abortions committed in the United States. All those precious lives lost in the United States since Roe essentially threw out every state law on abortion. And a restoration of the law in that regard is going to save millions of lives, countless millions of lives. And it's a great day. I'm assuming it's going to happen. It will be a great day for our community and our nation and the world. All those lives will be saved as a result of Roe being overturned. Now, of course, the left is going crazy, and look, this is going to be a public policy debate. And someone commented online, one of the downsides of being able to have your views imposed on other Americans through judicial fiat is that you don't have to defend your views, because the court said you're right, even though they bypassed the Democratic debates and other vehicles for debating public policy by just imposing one side. And you can see they don't know how to argue about this. I mean, they love abortion so much that they're now debating gay marriage. I mean, so it's not about abortion now? I mean, it's either abortion is this wonderful thing or it's not. So they don't want to debate abortion. They don't want to debate Roe. And that's why I encourage you to read the decision. It's accessible. This is a decision that is, I'm not a lawyer, but it's accessible to the American people and to the average reader. And I'm going to read a little bit from it, because it's nearly a perfect refutation of the culture of death that Roe gave us in terms of its impact and distortion of our constitutional authorities and our constitutional legal system. For the first, and I'm going to give you a few quotes from this decision, which I guess we can post a link to it if you want to look at it completely. For the first 185 years after the adoption of the Constitution, each state was permitted to address the issue in accordance with the views of its citizens, the issue being abortion. Then in 1973, this court decided Roe versus Wade. Even though the Constitution makes no mention of abortion, the court held that it confers a broad right to obtain one. And that was it. That was it. And later on, the court notes, Justice Alito here notes that the dissenter, and he quotes it approvingly in the Roe versus Wade decision, the great Justice Byron Wright aptly put it in his dissent, the decision was an exercise of raw judicial power. And he wasn't saying that approvingly. And then later in this draft opinion, it is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives. The permissibility of abortion and the limitations upon it are to be resolved, like most important questions in our democracy, by citizens trying to persuade one another and then voting. And that's again a quote from a prior dissent in one of the pro-abortion decisions. This is what the Constitution and the rule of law demand. And so at the end, Justice Alito concludes, we end this opinion where we began. Abortion presents a profound moral question. The Constitution does not prohibit the citizens of each state from regulating or prohibiting abortion. Roe and Casey was a subsequent decision that helped underpin Roe, abrogated the authority. We now overrule those decisions and return that authority to the people and their elected representatives. So the left pretends to be in favor of democracy, but they hate democracy. And they hate the idea that unborn human beings might have more protections under law for their right to life under state laws. And I'm not going to debate with you or explain to you why I oppose abortion and why human beings who are unborn deserve rights, including the right to life. But I think it's I think to describe it as that is to kind of explain where I stand. The question I think Americans need to have, will they move to protect the lives of all unborn human beings, most unborn human beings, some unborn human beings, or just a few unborn human beings, or no unborn human beings? And there's no doubt these are unborn human beings. These are human beings in the womb of their mother. And what rights are we going to afford those human beings? And what rights that other human beings have will we deprive them of without any process? That's the question. And I know where I stand on the question, and I guess other citizens are going to have to think it through as well as the various states. And the states are going to be already moving forward. Many have, I think there's a few that have a few laws that will be triggered that will largely protect unborn human beings. Now, you can expect, to follow up earlier, that pro-life views will be censored, that there will be violence directed at pro-lifers. The attacks on the church have commenced. Churches are under assault. Protests occurred at churches all over the country. There's actually been a raft of anti-Catholic violence even before this leak by Politico, or a leak to Politico. So these are not going to be pleasant times, but in the end, more unborn human beings are going to be born when Roe is overturned. And that's something we can all celebrate as Americans and human beings. So I'm looking forward to that day, and I'm unapologetically doing so. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.